is your winner and the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion,
Hello there, I'm tired, and this is Alex, and I almost hit record, or I almost started talking before I ever hit the record button, and we would have gone for like 90 minutes talking about nothing because there would be no evidence that there was a recording. But I'm Josh. This is Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. Alex, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm lovely. The cream rises to the top. The top of cream.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
And I am the cream of the crop in this episode.
I think we might have a guest who has a better claim to the cream of the crop. That is one of the best people I've ever known. Hemanstarfox, one of my oldest friends from way back in the day, ran into you at the movie theater and was like, oh my God, we need to do something for the podcast. And you were watching, or you're going to see Queen of the Ring. So first and foremost, Hemanstarfox, I have to ask, how is Queen of the Ring?
Well, you know, when you asked me to come on this podcast in the state of the world in such trying times as this, while we're facing mass deportations and all sorts of strife and peril and climate change, I thought to myself, yes, what the world needs is more men talking about their interests.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Queen of the Ring was possibly the worst movie I've ever paid to see.
Oh, no.
It was so bad. It was like a wrestling fan went into ChatGPT and was like, ChatGPT, write me a wrestling movie script based off of a loose interpretation of a historical wrestler and the following playlist of my favorite Pornhub videos. That was literally what it was like. It was odd. I would not recommend it.
So, who's the star of this Pornhub movie you saw? I just
Emily Beth Rickards.
Yeah, like it
Felicity
had actually,
from
like,
Arrow herself.
Yeah, like it had a legit cast. Like it had legitimate wrestlers. But it's so hard to describe. So like there's like bad movie can't be bad, like you know, like something like Starship Troopers. And there are a lot of bad wrestling movies that over time have become good. Like I think the best example is No Holds Barred, which was supposed to be like a very serious movie about wrestling. And then over time has just become like a complete meme factory. This is one of those bad movies that was trying to be good and trying to be legit, but was just written poorly. One of the best examples is that it's set in like the 1930s, 1940s. And towards the end, like the main male protagonist, who is objectively like a terrible person throughout the whole movie, quotes Scott Hall's Hall of Fame induction speech of like, you know, times get tough, but bad guys get better. I don't think that was the exact quote, but that's a literal quote in the movie. And then like a lot of the wrestling scenes where the men are training the women, they end up in like really sexually precarious situations. And then like weird music that's out of place comes in. Like when I'm like not trying to be crass when I say that I feel like a guy just threw a prompt into ChatGPT and was like, hey, write me a movie script based off of this historical wrestler and use these following like Pornhub videos that I like as a reference. Like, because it's like trying to be empowering to women while at the same time being like, these women are clearly idiots, but they're really hot.
So it's the Futurama take on women?
Yeah. It's like death by snoo snoo very, very slowly.
It reminds me of watching Madam Web and the CPR scene, which was just shot so erotically. I'm like, and even like the way that they're talking, she's like, okay, so this is how you do CPR if you ever need it. And then she's like breathing heavily. She's like, okay, now you take over. It's like, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, personally, when I think about the most potentially erotic experiences of my life, it's always when I'm near death. So yeah, CPR's got to be up there.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that CPR sequence, I think she only does like 3 chest compressions. Like, I'm tired now. Let's change. And then they have to bring in the next person. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only supposed to be like a strong superhero, but like 3, like it's like that episode of The Office where they're learning CPR and like they just and they're like, just call it. But you only like tried for like 10 seconds. Call it.
Kevin's the best. So Hemanstarfox, we have you on because, as we're alluding to, with you being one of the like 5 people who went to go see Queen of the Ring, you are a pretty big wrestling fan.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're here to talk WrestleMania 41. So let's talk a little bit about our respective journeys through the wrestling ecosystem. I started watching, I think in like early 96. The neighbor kid for me when I moved into the area was a really big wrestling fan. And Shawn Michaels had just won the Royal Rumble, and he was super excited because he was buying into the Shawn Michaels babyface run. And I just got excited because I was 10, 11 years old. And it's like, oh, cool. Like, dudes fighting and they're super muscular, so like superheroes, and they're doing crazy stuff, jumping off the top rope. I bought into it. And then like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were doing some fantastic stuff. Then you had the NWO enter the picture, and things just got crazy, and like learning the history of these guys bouncing from the WWE to the WCW. I was all in for like 4 or 5 years. And then by like 1999, I just kind of stopped watching because I got really tired of like every match seemingly ending in a disqualification. And it just wasn't entertaining for me anymore. And so I just kind of fell off of it. But thankfully, one of my favorite not newer, but I've been watching this YouTube channel for a while now called Wrestling Bios that like is taking the entire Monday Night War between WCW and WWE. And he's doing like a head-to-head nightly battle every week up until the merger. And so it's kind of allowed me to go back and see like what I missed. And for the most part, I'm like, I didn't miss much, like at least on the WCW side.
I think WCW literally ended 2 years later. And go figure that that wrestling brought in a new fan because interesting characters and interesting storylines that felt like they had real consequence. And then you got bored because the things that happen inside the ring where the storytelling happens no longer has a consequence. It just everything ends with a
no decision or
yeah, which I mean, you know, like all of the things that humanity loves storytelling wise just never have any definitive endings. I mean, when I think of the love of this new Marvel Cinematic Universe, people are like, yes. And I love how there's just never clear endings, or you never know who the good guys are or the bad guys are, or any sort of consequence to any sort of action. And for some reason, pro wrestling will be really good at that and then just decide, you know what, this is working, we should probably make stuff worse.
That's funny.
Alex, how about you? Where has your wrestling journey began and where is it currently?
I know I watched wrestling as a kid. All I remember is I really liked Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker. And somewhere around the age of 12, maybe, I stopped watching it. And then I had some friends in high school that were really, really into it, but it seemed like they were way too intense about it. And so I completely missed The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I completely missed their stuff. And then I started sort of getting back into it about 7 years ago or so. But I made the mistake of going to a shadow match. And now, mind you, they had some great people there, like Becky the Man Lynch was there. And I forget what their name is, the New Age or something like that. It was, yeah, New Day was there, which was great. I was laughing my ass off as they're playing trumpets while power attacking people with their butts. Hysterical. But I was just like, is this what wrestling is now? Which I did not realize that shadow matches were, more like warm-ups, just continuation stuff, if to keep people going. But then I found my way back in with a little show called Young Rock. And gosh dang it, that show was amazing. Because it was, every episode seemed to like just bring back something up in my head. I'm like, oh man, I remember the Iron Sheik. Yeah. Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan. Yeah, I remember that Ric Flair match that they're talking about. And Mick Foley. Oh, and I was so sad that it ended before he really started. Because I would have loved to hopefully have Young Rock catch me up with the late 90s, early 2000s that I completely missed. I am a fan of Asuka and Becky the Man Lynch, especially since Becky Lynch owns that she sucks at Jeopardy based off of we saw her on The Weakest Link, which she did really well on, and then she did an episode of Celebrity Jeopardy, which she set the record for like only answering one question correctly or something like that. So after that episode aired and she was walking in, people were holding up signs saying Becky sucks at Jeopardy, and she stopped and like signed all the signs.
I mean, at that point, you need to own it. Alex, I think you are legitimately the first person I've ever met that watched Young Rock.
I was the one. I was the point one in the demo.
I'm pretty sure you were the one. Like, wrestling fans always get really excited when we meet each other out in the wild because it's hard to actually meet fellow wrestling fans out in the wild. Usually, if people do watch wrestling, it's still kind of like if you're an adult, you don't really talk about it. And if you do talk about it, people are like, and so like the only people that I knew that watched Young Rock were like people that make wrestling content. And they only watched it because like it was their job. You are legitimately the first person I've ever met that was like, I was watching Young Rock.
It was really fun, and a lot of stories were legit, and the respect that they showed to the wrestlers was really nice. And especially looking up some of the stories, like, did this really happen and stuff like that? I actually, from what I could find, it seemed to happen. Other wrestlers are mentioned in it. Like, they seemed like, because they were using their stage names and stuff and their persona, so they had to get permission. They seemed to like how they were represented, which, of course, most of them were shown in the great light. What I actually really appreciate about it is, I think it was the third season, with some stuff about Vince McMahon came out. They started kind of like pulling back the curtain about how much of a douche he was, which I was like, oh, okay, so this is not a complete like a Halo kind of like about how nice it was about being a wrestler and he took care of everybody and we're all a family. It's like, no, he's kind of a jerk, and some of us were pretty jerky too. Yeah, I actually appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, go figure. By losing a position of power, people freely talk about their actual feelings because there's no consequences. It's wild.
Did Young Rock ever cover Hulk Hogan screwing over the wrestling roster from unionizing with Jesse Ventura?
No, but they did cover his dad getting screwed over by WWE by taking side deals, The Rock's dad. And that's how he kind of like was on the up about being signed with WWE, and then got screwed out of it. And Vince held it against him for like 17 years or something like that. Yeah. So they didn't do that about the Hulk, no.
All right. Well, Hemanstarfox, how did you get into wrestling? Where's your journey into the world of pro wrestling entertainment?
Yeah, so I've been a fan for a really long time, and I think I'm probably, out of the three of us, the most consistent fan, which makes sense as to why I'm on this podcast. So my earliest memory is like laying with my mom as a toddler, and I don't remember what we were watching, but I remember being really excited. I'm like, so after your show, the wrestling comes on, and being really excited about it. And I remember for like my third birthday, my parents took me to a WWF at the time house show. And I remember that the main event was Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter. And I was a big Hulk Hogan fan. I had the electric talking toothbrush. I had the original wrestling buddy. I had the pajamas with the headband, which was like really impractical for pajamas. And I demanded to wear the headband every single time. And I remember my parents surprised me because I didn't know where I was going. And I had never been to an arena before. And they were like, do you know where we're at? We're at wrestling. And they were like, Hulk Hogan's going to be here. And they were like, also, The Undertaker's going to be here. And they said I could get one souvenir. And my biggest regret is being a kid, I had a choice between getting a Hulk Hogan t-shirt or getting the I don't know if you guys will remember this. Do you remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the guy that would carry the 2x4 to the ring and say ho all the time? Yeah. So there were foam 2x4s, and I chose that over the t-shirt because I was like, I'm gonna be so cool with this thing. And then immediately when I brought it home, my brother was jealous and tore it in half. But I remember being terrified when The Undertaker came out. Because when you're like a toddler, like the most terrifying person imaginable is like an Undertaker, like an old Western Undertaker.
The personification of death, yeah. Yeah.
And I remember being like, Mom, what do I do when Sergeant Slaughter comes out? He's like, you boo him. And I was like, but what if he sees me? And then she was like, Hulk Hogan will protect you. And I was like, right. And when Hulk came out with like, you know, the I'm a Real American, and he came out with the flag, like I went bananas. And I was like way back in our local arena, and there's no way he could see me, but I swear like his blue eyes saw me. And I was like, Mom, Hulk sees me. He knows I'm here. He knows I believe in him. And the whole like Hulk up thing happened where he's losing. And then all of a sudden, you know, all the Hulkamaniacs are cheering happened. And from that point forward, it was like my entire life was wrestling. And then towards, I got really bored once WWF bought out WCW. There was no real competition. The storylines got even more kind of crass and just kind of like soap opera based. Also, you know, during high school it was like really not cool to be into wrestling. So as things tend to occur, and then in 2011, I moved into my current apartment building. And I have a disability called cerebral palsy. And one of my neighbors has cerebral palsy. And I kind of noticed that he was lonely and didn't really have a lot of people interacting with him. So I asked him if he wanted to hang out. And I didn't know like what to do, but I knew that there was like an NBA playoff game happening. So I was like, yeah, do you want to watch an NBA playoff game? I don't even really follow NBA, but I was like, I don't know what else to do. And so then I get there, and then he kind of quietly goes, I actually watch wrestling on Mondays. Would you mind watching Monday Night Raw? And so then I just was like, oh, dude, I used to totally watch wrestling. And that was around the time that CM Punk was having the Summer of Punk, and Bryan Danielson, now known as Daniel Bryan, was coming up. And I just started watching wrestling with my neighbor and getting super into it. And then to kind of have more things to talk about, I delved into the kind of early generation of wrestling podcasts. So I was listening to Colt Cabana's podcast and a lot of like the Pro Wrestling Torch stuff. And then that was also when like Google first bought out YouTube. So then like, because I was watching a lot of those podcasts, Googling a lot of stuff, that I was getting a lot of YouTube content and brought me down the rabbit hole. And, you know, now I'm just a big wrestling nerd. The first match I remember though, was actually, do you guys remember Vader?
Oh yeah. Big Van Vader. He was on Boy Meets World once.
Yeah. So like, I remember, I was on a family vacation and, somewhere up in like real rural Wisconsin, and there was this babysitter watching us, some random lady that I don't think we've ever met before, and she put on wrestling. And I remember Vader back then, he used to like have this like huge kind of samurai helmet, and then he used to take it off, and then like he would go to the crowd, and then it would just shoot like steam, and that's like the first thing I remember, and I was like obsessed with Vader. And then of course he was wrestling Hulk Hogan, so I was into it. So there you go. The epic story of one dorky man's love of professional wrestling.
Well, we're going to mine that love of wrestling for some content here, because we're going to talk the at least the confirmed WrestleMania 41 card, kind of get your take on it, give us a little bit of background on why we should care about certain things. But first and foremost, before we do that, we're going to hear from our buddy Caesar over at the No on 15 Allcast, and we'll be right back.
15. No, I'm 15. No, I'm 15. No, I'm 15.
So, what's our show about? It's about some dudes talking about movies, just like this.
With Goofy screaming with them.
So you're talking that they should have replaced it like with a Tom and Jerry scream or something like that?
Or you might hear something like this.
Oh my gosh.
That whole movie, waiting to see what happens with Blanca, is like the most aggravating thing in that film. But for the most part, we talk movies from the 80s, 90s, and today. And if you grace us with your ear time, you might hear one of these 30-second gems like this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I did not get a chance to watch this one this week.
Give it to him anyways.
We're gonna give it to you, but anyway, you ready?
I'm gonna give you the 30-second review of Tron Uprising.
All right. Start the clock and then. So give us a shot and listen to the No on 15 Allcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.
No, I'm 15.
And we're back. Definitely give Caesar your time. Give him your ear time, because No on 15 is just a bunch of fun. And those 30-second recaps are always great, because it's always fun catching people on their heels. But we are here with Hemanstarfox, Josh and Alex. That is, we are here with Hemanstarfox to talk WrestleMania 41, which is this coming Saturday from day of release, where Cody Rhodes is defending his undisputed WWE Championship against the now heel John Cena, as well as a few other matches that I want to get a little bit of information on, because throughout the last few years, mostly through Cody Rhodes' return, because I think this has probably been one of the most epic return runs for a wrestler in a long while, not to mention the fact that Cody Rhodes is from the Dusty Rhodes dynasty of family members. For me, I found Cody Rhodes' return really interesting, because Vince McMahon seemingly had like a grudge against the Rhodes family. Like, I remember Dusty won like the Intercontinental Championship, but he never got to get anywhere beyond that. But he was like a big WCW guy. He won the championship from Ric Flair several times, but Vince just never let him rise to the main event picture when he had his stint in the WWE. And to find out that his son, Dustin Rhodes' half brother, who was Goldust, apparently Cody Rhodes had a stint as, was it Stardust? Like the gimmick of Stardust and Goldust, like that makes sense to a guy who watched the 90s WWE. But to find out that a Rhodes was in line for a WWE championship run, I found that really intriguing, because again, seemed like Vince had a grudge against the Rhodes family for whatever reason. And then when Cody Rhodes was able to somehow manage to win the undisputed championship last year, despite all reports saying that CM Punk was scheduled to win the Royal Rumble that year, but because of circumstances with CM Punk getting injured, they adjusted on the fly and Cody Rhodes won. Just a super cool thing. And then there's all sorts of background stuff that we don't need to get into, because we're talking WrestleMania 41. But Hemanstarfox, let's start with, I don't know, I gave you a list earlier. What match most intrigues you from the list that I showed you earlier, between like the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship, the two women's championships, the IC or US title, and then the only other like undercard that I have that's not a championship match is the Jade Cargill and Naomi match, which I really only have that on there because I need context, because I know there's like an elimination chamber thing that happened, but I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, so actually, before I jump into that, can I give a little bit of a rhetorical argument why this WrestleMania might be the most historically important WrestleMania since WrestleMania 3?
By all means, go ahead.
Okay, so for those of the Talking Smack universe that And
The
if you're listening to this
Smackiverse, yes.
podcast, the Smackiverse, and if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I am not going to watch WrestleMania, I don't know why you would choose to listen to this podcast, but in case you are, this is the most important WrestleMania that has ever happened since WrestleMania 3. To give a really brief context of WrestleMania 3, the whole future of WWE was put on the line for WrestleMania 3. Vince McMahon, the owner at the time, like basically took out loans and put everything on the line, threw it all at the Detroit Pontiac Dome, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for WrestleMania 3. If it went well, that meant that the business could continue on. If not, it would have probably meant the end of professional wrestling in North America as we knew it, because Vince McMahon had kind of killed off a lot of the territory system. The NWA wasn't very relevant at the time, and there was really only kind of one show in the town. NWA was still kind of fighting a fight, but probably would have meant that wrestling as we knew it back in 1983 would have ended. There would have been no huge 1980s boom in the golden era. And I would argue that this upcoming Saturday and Sunday is historically relevant. It is the first WrestleMania that will not have Vince McMahon at the head of WWE, because now it is owned by TKO Holdings, which is essentially the UFC. Vince McMahon has been ousted out of wrestling altogether, and this means that there is no Vince McMahon, and wrestling is at a precipice where it is possibly the most accessible it has ever been. It is now being broadcast on Netflix. WWE Raw every Monday night is being broadcasted on Netflix. They're having licensing deals that go into the billions of dollars. And this WrestleMania kind of decides if WWE is a relevant portion to the portfolio for TKO Holdings. Not to mention that John Cena, who is kind of the wrestler's wrestler of this generation, is having his retirement match, and he has been the childhood hero to about every wrestling fan for like the last 25 years. He is now turned evil. He has gone back on his hustle, loyalty, and respect, and he's going against the grain for his final match ever against Cody Rhodes. And as you've alluded to, Cody Rhodes has a really interesting backstory. Not only was Dusty Rhodes an important wrestler, but a lot of people don't fully appreciate that he was also the main booker for WCW, which was WWE's main competitor. And Vince McMahon, when he isn't the one that made you, he doesn't understand you, is kind of what the popular take on that is. And so then he kind of wants you to make him laugh. And so he dressed up the indelible Dusty Rhodes, who was seen as like the common man's hero in Southern wrestling. You know, he
was the American dream.
The American dream, baby. He dined with kings and queens and slept at alleys eating pork and beans. But also, he was kind of the mastermind behind the main competitor. And when he wrestled for Vince McMahon, he was kind of seen as a little bit of a joke, a little bit of the fool. And so his son Cody comes up in wrestling and is also kind of seen as a little bit of just like a middling dork. So then he has only ever wrestled in WWE, and a few years ago, he decides to not renew his contract. He goes on the indie scene, kind of becomes this indie darling, and then all of the wrestling media kind of says, yeah, but like you can't pull any crowds like you did at WWE. Like that's just not possible in today's wrestling. And he literally said on Twitter, I bet you that I can pull over like 20,000. And so then he gets together with some of his wrestling friends. They start getting a huge backer, this guy by the name of Tony Khan, who's the son of the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars and kind of the stat man behind their whole drafting policy. And they're like, we're going to do this thing called All or Nothing, right? Like, we're just going to go all in on independent professional wrestling. It becomes this whole thing, and then Cody Rhodes and his friends become the executive vice presidents of this brand new wrestling company called All Elite Wrestling. And WWE has a legitimate competitor for the first time in about 20 years. Then Cody Rhodes abruptly leaves AEW and then returns at WrestleMania, like literally looking like Homelander from The Boys, like looking like how we all dreamed Captain America would be, and is kind of saying like, I am that guy. So then last WrestleMania, he finally gets the WWE Championship. He finishes the story that his dad couldn't. However, but the ongoing story in it is like, yeah, but is he as good as John Cena? Can he be the one guy that the entire company bases itself off of? Can he be the guy that literal kid's dying wish is to be with Cody Rhodes? Can he be the hero for a generation? And that's what this Sunday is all about. And that's what like the greater context of WrestleMania this year is about, is like, is there going to be a wrestling company that can capture a whole new generation, or are we just going to fade off into the sunset? Is like WWE going to be like the 1985 Bears? Oh yeah, I mean, you know, like the Bears are great, but you should have seen them in 1985. That's kind of what's at stake here for those of you that might be like, okay, like I watch wrestling, but is it really that important? I would say right now is like the best time to get involved with wrestling. It is the most easy to get it. It is probably the most accessible and diverse that I've ever seen it be. Women's wrestling has never been more relevant and is arguably more relevant than half of the male counterpart matches. So I would say this is important. In like the world of non-important things, this is important.
Well said. And I love that you brought up the Cody Rhodes John Cena comparison, because one of the things I was going to bring up as we talk about the Undisputed Championship match is that I can't remember the name of the podcast, but I think it's like Chris Van Vliet is the guy who has the podcast. Mm-hmm. He's a former wrestler who has like all the big names on there all the time. He had Cody Rhodes on shortly, I think it was after SummerSlam. And Cody Rhodes was talking about how he's kind of now in the John Cena boat where he just can't turn heel. He's got too many kids. He's got too many fans. He's got too much support. Anytime his music comes on, like it's the loudest pop of the night. Like his entrance is by far the coolest entrance I've seen since like Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like I've never seen a crowd get that loud for the music. And it's like a rock concert when he comes out too. It's just incredible. Even if you don't watch wrestling, just let yourself be immersed in that moment when he comes out and the crowd is singing along with his theme music, and then he taps the ground and then he comes up with the fireworks and everything. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. It's I haven't been able to see a live wrestling show since the COVID outbreak, but the last one that I went to, it's interesting because John Cena was headlining. It was supposed to be a cage match. It ended up not being a cage match. It was a little bit of a bummer. I've never seen a cage match live. Being a wheelchair user, I was in the accessible seating, and it just so happened that this like 13-year-old kid, he was like between 10 and 13, I would think, was sitting with his dad in his wheelchair, and we were sitting in front of a guardrail that was literally anchored in concrete, so it was like physically a part of the building. And when John Cena came out, this kid lost it to the point where he was John Cena, and he was like grabbing the rail. He was shaking it so violently that it was literally moving in the concrete. Like this kid's excitement was so raw that like he had superhuman strength. He was physically moving something that should not move. And that's kind of the magic of like storytelling, right? Is that is that it makes us feel bigger than ourselves, and we can actually do things in reality when we're engaged in a story that we could never imagine. And that's the big question about Cody Rhodes. Is he like, yes, is Cody Rhodes cool? Yeah, like Cody Rhodes is pretty cool. Is Cody Rhodes kind of seemingly like a really good dude? Yeah, he handles himself really well. Like when a third party was offering Royal Rumble tickets and a guy in a wheelchair got them, but none of the hotel and the tickets, they weren't wheelchair accessible, the third party company was like, sorry, bad luck. That sucks for you. And so the guy reaches out to Cody Rhodes and be like, this is unfair. I just want to go to I want to go to the Royal Rumble. And Cody Rhodes is like, that's stupid. Let's take care of that. Like, that's the type of guy that Cody Rhodes is to the fans. And so if he doesn't beat John Cena, it's like, well, then where does he go? Because yeah, sure, he's like the champion, but like, does the championship really mean anything? Because as the famous Ric Flair has always said, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
So I have a question, and please don't take this the wrong way, but is there anybody in the WWE right now that is not over the age of 40 that is interesting? Because like,
no one that I want to talk about.
yeah, because like, you know, John Cena is like, I don't know, 900. Hulk Hogan was on he was on to numerous boos earlier this year or late last year. He's got to be 1,500 by now. The Rock has been back a little bit as a full-on heel. He's in his mid to late 1800s. You know, who is there that's kind of young, that is coming up and coming other than Cody Rhodes? I mean, like, I like Asuka. I think her gifts are adorable about how sweet she is. Bayley, who's a little bit of a heel right now, is not as sweet and huggable as she used to be. Paige is gone and in a different place after they broke her back for like the third time, and now I believe she's wrestling under Saraya in a different league. So who does WWE have that is not near pension age?
WWE actually, it swings younger than you would think it would.
Okay,
they have their developmental show NXT that's very popular. Looking at the WrestleMania card specifically, like one name that points out that is under the age of 40 with Braun Breaker, who is under the age of 40. He's the son of Rick Steiner of the Steiner brothers. I personally don't. Yeah, that is Rick Steiner, the Dogface Gremlin's son.
Props to him for not taking the Steiner name into the ring.
No shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I find him like a really boring version of Goldberg, but you know, like he is very popular. He's very explosive. He's very physically gifted.
He has the look of like at least like the late 90s, early 2000s WWE. Like he's the guy that like would carry the belt at some point just because of the way he looked.
Yeah. So historically, the Intercontinental title has always been like the title for the people that are really good at wrestling. That hasn't been the case in more recent history, but I think they're trying to reestablish it as like the WWE championships, and then there's the Intercontinental titles. And I think they're trying to kind of put more prestige on it. So there's Braun Breaker, then there's Penta. Penta is very interesting. Penta is a luchador from Mexico. He's the son of a very famous luchador in Mexico, Pentagon. And there's Penta. He comes out kind of dancing like La Parka, if you remember that from the WCW days. He's very interesting. He is known as Cero Miero, Zero Fear, No Fear. He is very, very popular, has a very interesting moveset, really great presence, and he is also facing Dominic Mysterio, who is the son of Rey Mysterio.
Okay. Dominic
Mysterio is probably the most interesting heel in WWE right now. He is, you know, kind of dweeby. He is what maybe you would consider a beta, but he acts like he's the alpha. He hides behind women. He has a really long, glorious mullet. All he ever talks about is how he wants to hang out with Bobby and like eat his chicken tendies. And he's a really talented wrestler. Like he actually gets legitimate boos, not just people playing like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play the part as an audience member and boo the bad guy. Like, people really don't like him. They want to see him get beat.
He has that face.
Yes. And then
and he exudes that smugness, because isn't he also like Eddie Guerrero's godson?
Yes, and he looks like Eddie Guerrero. Like, he looks like Eddie Guerrero.
And I think that's part of what it is people just, they see him trying to emulate a little bit of Eddie, but like they're maybe not registering that they're doing Eddie from like his late WCW days where he was getting booed. Like they admired the skill set, but his persona and everything was like, oh, this smug bastard.
Yeah. And then he's also going up like against his like boss in the Judgment Day, Finn Balor. Now, Finn Balor is over 40, but Finn Balor is super cool. He made his name in New Japan Pro Wrestling under the name Prince Devitt. He was kind of seen as like almost an Undertaker like figure. If you've ever heard of the Bullet Club, which is a really popular faction that has a following in the US and in Japan, he started the Bullet Club. And some of the alumni of the Bullet Club are AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks. So a lot of the main competition for WWE that is in All Elite Wrestling, they all came from the Bullet Club, and Finn Balor is the guy that started the Bullet Club, and he's the leader of this faction called the Judgment Day. So watch out for that IC title 4-way match. That's going to be probably a banger.
Looking over the WrestleMania fight card, I think the IC championship, the US championship, and the one match I don't really want to talk about, but I'll mention very quickly, is the Logan Paul versus AJ Styles match. I never saw AJ Styles in his heyday, but I know that he is a guy that is very well respected in the wrestling culture. I don't want to talk about this match mostly because Logan Paul is a piece of shit human being, kind of like what we're talking about with Dominic Mysterio, but like people legitimately just hate Logan Paul. Like they recognize he's an awful human being and they hate him all the more because he is an amazing athlete, and like a piece of shit person like that should not be that gifted and talented. So like I think that's a match that very well could steal the show, even though the result is probably a foregone conclusion that Logan Paul is going to win. Like AJ Styles is beyond that point where he should win this match. He has nothing to gain from it. But I think the US Championship match with LA Knight and Jacob Fatu is really interesting as well. Like it might not be as high flying as Paul versus Styles. It might not be as dynamic as the IC Championship, which is the Fatal 4-Way we just talked about. But Jacob Fatu is a guy that's really interesting in the WWE right now.
Yeah. So to briefly mention Logan Paul, as a philosophy major and someone that cares a lot about ethics, Logan Paul does not align with my ethics. And that's kind of the sad part about wrestling, is like we're in a place of transition where we're deciding like what we want to be. And I've always been a bit of an outlier in the world of professional wrestling, having the ethics that I do and caring about the things that I care about. With all that being said, Logan Paul is very gifted. I think he's possibly the most relevant person on the WWE roster, because guess what? He's going to bring in way more virability. He's going to bring in way more interest in sponsors, and he doesn't wrestle full time like the others do. So he can do a lot more crazy. He can take a lot more risk and get, and basically all of his matches are centered on doing really interesting viral moments. And they always make sure to put him in the ring with people that are very capable. Someone like AJ Styles. AJ Styles was someone that was always relegated to the independent wrestling scene. He was always working for lower companies, and he was the ones that the lower companies would always rely on, and he worked his way up about 10 years ago, and he's been really solid. Once again, even AJ Styles is not someone that seems to align with my personal ethics, but watch out for that match. Probably for anyone that knows nothing about wrestling, that will be probably the most interesting match to watch that you can fundamentally understand.
Wait, is Logan Paul not Jake Paul?
Jake Paul is the guy who fixes the boxing matches.
But I thought Logan Paul
is the guy
too.
who sells Prime.
I know. Didn't Logan Paul also fight?
Yes.
Both?
Yes. He fought Floyd Mayweather.
Was that Logan Paul? I thought that was Jake Paul.
I think Logan Paul did the exhibition with Floyd. Jake Paul's the one that fought Tyson.
Oh, he did Tyson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's a wrestler?
Yes. Very popular.
So both of these jackasses box, wrestle, have an energy drink that I can't escape from?
Yep.
Huh.
Yes.
Yeah, the worst people you know making all the money.
I mean, something that I was legitimately lamenting over is that all of my hobbies and everything that I love is dominated by dude bros. Literally everything from professional wrestling to my love of like nerdy board games is slowly just being infiltrated by like dude bros that don't share my ethics. And I'm like, can't I just have a little thing?
Does Rousey still wrestle?
No, she's done wrestling and is now doomsday prepping and having children.
As one does.
To her credit, she did apologize for perpetuating conspiracy theories regarding the Sandy Hook shooting. So, you know, hopefully she's on her way to expanding to be a better role model.
Okay. All right. Let's get this back on track.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the current major storyline? Because I know that a lot of wrestling is, a lot of the investment is that it is a continual, never-ending soap opera, which of course as a kid I absolutely loved. You know, I mean, I loved The Undertaker. I legitimately, even though I haven't watched a match on air in probably like 15 years, when I watched supposedly The Undertaker's last match, like a few years back, where, you know, he left the hat in the ring and I saw that clip, I was crying. I was like, oh my God, he's finally, and then I found out that he'd lost at was a WrestleMania. I think he had lost in like 15 years or something like that.
It was a Saudi Arabia event, and then he had like a cinematic match called Taker's Last Ride, and that was his like last match. Yeah.
Yeah, I was with him when he was, you know, when he was the Undertaker, when he was the American Badass Undertaker on that motorcycle. Bravo to him, man. You know, like learn to ride, Undertaker.
Yeah.
He was a badass, and so I know he's basically stepped away, and he may come back at one point or something, but I mean, as far as I'm aware, he's not actively wrestling. So what are the storylines going on right now? Like, is there something going on where somebody's trying to betray somebody to take over the brand? Is somebody marrying into somebody's family? Who has betrayed who? That are we wondering if they're going to be alive again? Is there something being pre-filmed where they're out like in a desert going to a bunker? You know, some of those crazy things they used to do. And then it's like, you know, what is our storylines? Not just, you know, because matches, yeah, boxing, football, whatever. But wrestling needs that motivation of who is attacking who and who could betray who, you know?
If I could interject really quick, just because obviously the obvious one is Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, and like the implications with The Rock being behind John Cena as the board member. Piggybacking off of this, because I think the more interesting storyline, at least to me, or maybe one that might be more interesting to Alex as well, is the triple threat match that I forgot to put down here of Roman Reigns versus my favorite current wrestler, Seth Rollins, versus CM Punk, Chicago's homeboy, as it were. I think that is maybe, like, in terms of storyline, that might be the most interesting storyline of the night.
Other than the main event on Sunday between John Cena and Cody Rhodes. Probably, you know, because one of the things that people that don't want to be interested in wrestling will always throw it as like, it's fake, it's predetermined, blah, 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 blah. And what I always like to point out is like, so much of life is predetermined and we're just along for the ride. For instance, a lot of the sports we watch, we have a good idea of who's going to win most of the time. And we're just kind of hoping that it's a good game, right? Or we just really like to watch that team. And so other than this big, huge, important storyline of like, can Cody Rhodes be the man that becomes the man? CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns is an incredibly important match, because there's so many intersecting webs. So you got CM Punk, who is seen as the person that wasn't supposed to be champion, that became the number one guy about 10 years ago, abruptly, legitimately, like, walked out of WWE, had a vicious lawsuit with them, joined didn't wrestle for like 8 years, joins All Elite Wrestling, the main competitor. It's supposed to be this huge thing. Literally can't get along with people there, gets into legitimate fist fights, and like has terrible legal problems, then comes back to WWE, something he said he would never do. And now he's trying to prove that like he can still be someone who's relevant, and also he can be a good champion. Going against Seth Rollins, someone who has legitimately said, I don't like Phil Brooks. Phil Brooks is CM Punk's real life name. He says that he doesn't like him as a person, thinks that he's trash, thinks that he's a cancer. Then Seth Rollins is going against his former tag team partner, a member of the Rock's family, the Anoa'i family dynasty, Roman Reigns, who has kind of been the leader of the most important storylines for WWE over the last 3 years as part of the Bloodline, who leads the Usos, Jacob Fatu. And if you know anything about wrestling, you know how important the Anoa'i family is. We're talking about The Rock, Yokozuna. We're talking about
Fatu,
Taichi,
who was also
Peter
Rikishi.
Maivia, Rikishi. So we're talking about Roman Reigns is also kind of being like, hey, I know that John Cena is this big Hollywood actor. I could be a Hollywood actor too. I look like Jason Momoa with even better fake teeth. And this match is kind of going to decide is like, okay, but like, who is like the real locker room leader in the sense of, if you're deep into wrestling, there are the people that are really popular on the TV screen, but then there's like the people like the Undertakers and the Stone Cold Steve Austins that, you know, are almost bigger than wrestling itself. And they're the ones that are kind of like making sure that like wrestling is healthy behind the scenes. And that's what's really on the line here. You have Roman Reigns, who is known as the original tribal chief. You have Seth Rollins, known as the architect, known as the one that was like kind of holding WWE together during the COVID era, like has some of the most viral WrestleMania moments. And then CM Punk, the guy that was never supposed to be the guy, but is literally like a folk-like anti-hero, where even in wrestling companies he's not a part of, they've been chanting their name. Like crowds will chant CM Punk at wrestling shows that they know that he's not even at. That is how important CM Punk is to like the dorky wrestling nerds like me. And, you know, Chicago boys got to represent Chicago boys.
Forget about it.
All right.
Yeah, Seth Rollins, he's a guy that, as someone who has tangentially been watching wrestling mostly through like highlights that show up on social media, he's a guy that he reminds me a lot of like Macho Man Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels mixed together. He has that charisma where he's not afraid to go like flamboyant with it, but he's also like the man's man where he'll kick your ass in a moment. And this three-way match really kind of kicked off at the Royal Rumble, where Seth Rollins played a role in getting both Roman Reigns and CM Punk eliminated. And then it escalated in Elimination Chamber, where you thought Seth Rollins had gotten out of the ring after he had been eliminated, but he was hiding just off camera. And then he came and curb stomped CM Punk out of nowhere, which was incredible. And I think that was the moment where I was like, I think I like Seth Rollins, where like, I'll say he's my favorite wrestler right now, even though like I love Cody Rhodes' story, but I think Seth Rollins might be my favorite in-ring worker who also can do all the things on the mic and get heat while also getting the pops when he needs them as well. Like he's the guy that, if you've seen the clip from WrestleMania from however many years ago, he's the guy that went to go curb stomp
Randy Orton.
Yeah, he went to go do the curb stomp move to him, and like he gets thrown in the air, boosting himself off of Randy Orton, and then Randy Orton gives him the RKO. It's just an incredible video to watch, and it's like one of the coolest wrestling moves you'll ever see. Like it's probably not that intense. Like some people could do it, like even without much practice, but like it just looks really good when professionals do it that smoothly. And Randy Orton just pops up. He's like, ah.
And to go back to Alex's question, like, because Alex wants some of that hot tea. There's two matches that I've really thought of that, like, they have that kind of intrigue on the line. One is Naomi versus Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill is a human being that I am both terrified of and in awe of all at the same time. She looks like Storm from the X-Men should be. And she's like a former bodybuilder, has amazing presence, and actually looks like Storm from the X-Men. If you like look up her like picture, that is Storm to me. She is going against Naomi. Jade Cargill was injured and had come back at Elimination Chamber and had kind of broken up the women's championship match. So that's going to be a really interesting one. Jade Cargill, if everything works out, might be kind of the women's wrestler of a generation. The other interesting one that I think a lot of people are sleeping on is you talked about the New Day, right? And how much you love the New Day. They were throwing pancakes at the air. Three friends that were so tight. Big E broke his neck. His career might be over. He broke his. He had a C1 fracture of his vertebrae a couple of years ago and hasn't been wrestling. And his brothers, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, turned on him, and now they're evil, and they no longer care about good times or pancakes or any of that. They're going against the War Raiders, who are kind of like the Legion of Doom of this generation. They are Vikings that come out. They're like straight edge and they do like really intense moves. And they've been feuding with this bad version of the New Day. So those have a lot of interesting things on the line. I think that a lot of people are also sleeping on the world title match on Saturday. Gunther versus Jey Uso. So Jey Uso is one half of the Uso brothers, son of maybe the best butt in professional wrestling, Rikishi, doing the stink face. And those two were never supposed to be a big deal, but in recent times they became very relevant due to the bloodline storyline. And Jey Uso is now known as Main Event Jey Uso. And if you want to talk about like really organic pops, all he has to do is walk through the crowd and say yeet, and every 12-year-old and up in the building is going yeet, yeet, yeet. He's going against Gunther. Gunther is a man from Austria, and he was really hot on the indie scene, known as Walter. He used to come out to opera music. He's very proper. He's known as the Ring General. And he does the most vicious, like he has the most vicious moveset, where he's kind of seen as this like old school wrestler from like a bygone era. Like it seems like he's from 100 years ago.
He reminds me a lot of Dean Malenko, but bigger.
Yes, bigger, and like he does these chops that actually leaves welts. Like when he does moves, it feels like he might kill somebody. And what he's been doing is just poking at Jey Uso, saying that he doesn't belong in the ring, that the real ring general belongs in the ring. And then recently, what he's done is he beat Jimmy Uso to a pulp in front of his brother and said, like, if you were a real man like you say you are, you would have fought me, but you can't fight me. And he is right now the world champion. He holds the world title. And it's really leaving this question, is Jey Uso a guy who has always kind of been seen as the lower rung in the Anoa'i family? Are you really main event, or are you just saying you're main event? Because there are still people that are wondering, why did Jey Uso win this year's Royal Rumble? Nobody called that. Somebody like Jey Uso is not supposed to be in this position. And the ring general agrees.
That's a really interesting one, because that is the big point of Jey Uso has always kind of been the the second of two with the Uso brothers. Like it's Jay and what's his brother's name?
Jimmy,
Jay and Jimmy. Like they were tag champions. They were part of the bloodline. And yeah, Jay winning that Royal Rumble was extraordinarily surprising because it was down to him and John Cena. And I was like, oh, okay, somehow Cena's winning this. I guess they're building towards him surpassing Ric Flair as the all-time champion number. But they ended up having Jay win. And that's one that is the behind the scenes stuff of that really has to be engaging in some fashion because yeah, like I could see Jay being like an IC or US champion, but him going after one of the two major championships in the WWE, I feel like that has to be building towards some kind of bloodline story where it's going to be either a return of who is the guy that was the leader of the new bloodline,
Solo
Sikoa. Like maybe he comes back and there's like a new bloodline rivalry with Jay as the new world heavyweight champion or something. I couldn't really speculate on that because little soapbox moment here. I really hate the championship lineup for WWE where they have the Universal champion and then the heavyweight champion. But when I was growing up with it was always the heavyweight champion. And then like, I understand when they did the brand split, I get it. There's the SmackDown champion and the Raw champion. And it's supposed to be kind of like back when they were originally planning to do WCW and WWE as their own brands. So like that was supposed to be like each championship. And now like, but there's still like the top rung champion. And then you're the heavyweight champion, but you're kind of 1B or maybe even 2A. And I don't get it.
Right. Well, because like one, it's confusing, and you know, like it's like boxing. Tell me who is the middleweight boxing champion?
You probably can't.
Right, because there's way too many belts.
Yeah.
It's almost to a point that it doesn't matter because there's way too many belts. And you know, like UFC has a similar issue. Like it's hard to keep track of who has the belt because they have way too many things going on. And so, yeah, I totally agree that I think that there's too many belts. I think that it's hard for someone that's not constantly watching WWE content to even understand what's at stake. But something to think about, back to your point, because I know that we didn't really talk about Jacob Fatu, and I know that you wanted to talk about Jacob Fatu, is that there is potential that the Anoa'i family could come out with winning Saturday night's main event, right? Jacob Fatu, who is a member of the Anoa'i family that was never supposed to be in WWE. And I know I keep saying that. There's all these people that shouldn't have been in WWE. And that's part of the interesting thing of it is like WWE has a landscape that historically, if you were to look at it, it shouldn't have happened. It definitely wouldn't have happened under Vince McMahon. I would say not to like delve off into the weeds with this, but like look at this card and tell me, when have you seen so many women? When have you seen so many like not white dudes just being like incredibly relevant in professional wrestling? I don't know if I can think of a time where like there's been this much diversity. So right now, like, okay, so you have Roman Reigns, part of the Anoa'i family, main eventing Saturday night. Naomi is married to one of the Uso brothers. She's a part of the Anoa'i family. Then you have Jacob Fatu might win the U.S. title. I think he probably will. He is physically gifted. He moves like someone near 300 pounds shouldn't. One of the biggest reasons that he shouldn't be in WWE is because he has a felony record, and people just thought that they would have never let somebody like him. So he's like a real tough bruiser guy, moves like has this
he can do backflips.
He can do backflips. He can do a full running varial over the top rope, not jumping off. Like he literally jumps over the top rope and clears it with about over a foot gap. He has a presence that makes him feel legitimate.
He's got a Vader quality to him.
Yeah, but
even more athletic, like with a Shawn Michaels skill set.
And he's got like a dope grill. I mean, like, come on. Then you have I thought
You've
there
got
was
Jey
another
Uso in the heavyweight championship.
Yeah. So think about it. Like if Jey Uso wins the world title, then you have the US title like back in the bloodline. And then Jimmy kind of needs his like, hey, what about me time? Like this could be a wild time where it's like one family could kind of rule them all. Like it's like they're collecting all the Infinity Stones and we don't know what is going to happen when that happens.
So even behind the scenes stuff that's really engaging and intriguing right now, not just the storyline stuff, but what's happening behind the scenes. Let's jump into a couple of the main event pictures here. We really need to talk about, or I would like to talk about, I should say, the Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair Women's World Championship match. If we're going to skip over anything, I'd rather skip over Charlotte Flair. I was not impressed with what I saw of her at the Royal Rumble, but maybe I'm wrong. If you want to come back to that, we can really quickly, but let's talk about the triple threat match for the Women's Championship.
Yeah, the triple threat for the Women's Championship, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. We have Io Sky, who people sleep on, partially because she doesn't speak great English, being Japanese, but she has a really great kind of manic, like, goth girl. Like, I think if there's any, like, weebs listening to this, like, hey, Io's probably your girl. Alex.
Hey,
I'm not a weeb, but like I support you.
Like I said, I love Asuka because that gift that always goes around that's used in all kinds of situations where it's like this or this, and she goes both.
Right. Yeah.
And she's a good wrestler.
Asuka's legit. Also, she was the first women's wrestler that like wrote for Xbox Magazine in Japan back in the day.
She's
super cool. Yeah. So Io Sky is like this really cool, intense high flyer. She's kind of playing backseat to the rivalry between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, but I think that's intentional because she can't speak on the mic so much, but she's like, hey, you guys are all talking about how you're going to win this match, but I'm the women's champ. And she's real legit in the ring. Rhea Ripley is very, very important, is very beloved by the queer community. She's a muscle mommy.
She's a step on me mommy queen. Yes.
Yeah. She's got like the most insanely defined back I've ever seen. And she's like a big, tall Australian woman that also knows how to handle internet trolls. And she's just got this amazing swagger about her. When they announced that He-Man was going to have a live action movie, I was hoping that she would get cast as Evil Lynn. Tell me that she wouldn't play a great Evil Lynn.
How would you pass on her with Allison Brie, who is like a twig at this point?
You know, markets, right?
Name recognition, like, I guess. Yeah.
Like it's like you put an A-list celebrity, you're probably gonna get an A-list response. Yeah, so Rhea Ripley is probably the most popular person on the women's roster. And then you have Bianca Belair, who is incredibly gifted in the ring. She's known as the EST of WWE, which means that she's the best, she's the fastest, she's the flyest, and just incredibly strong women. It's going to be a really intense match. And I think that if you are of the idea that wrestling is like a homogenous, like dominated thing, like watch this match and it gives you an idea of like what women's wrestling is all about. And I'm super stoked for it.
I think we also need to talk about the actual most important match on that second night. And that's to find out if Bayley and Lyra win the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship match, because I love Bayley.
I also love Bayley. So Bayley came up through the WWE developmental system, and she was kind of seen as like she was like a very much a John Cena character. She would come out and she had like flailing inflatable tube men literally coming out of the sides of the ramp as she would come down. She would hug little girls. Little girls would cosplay as her. And then she kind of went evil for a while, started a faction called Damage Control, then got thrown out of Damage Control, and she's kind of now in this like veteran position and trying to show like, hey, I'm still that good Bayley, and I'm still the best in the ring. And she's trying to
She
prove
had a
it.
rough year last year too, if I remember right. Like she was WWE champion, then she lost it, I think, to Liv Morgan, and then she like got hurt. At least in storyline, she got hurt, and then she like had opportunities, but like shit kept rolling down at her.
You know, some of it was storyline, like, you know, like her friends betraying her and stuff, but also she's had a lot of injuries over the year, and like you know, like wrestling is a physically demanding sport, and most of the time you don't really last all that long, especially the women's careers tend to be shorter. So her body has gone through a lot of damage, and I think you've seen a lot of changes in just her physicality in the ring. But her character work is really strong, and I think she's going to really show kind of how important it is. Plus, behind the scenes, the WWE women's tag titles has not really been a thing since the 80s. And she and her friend, formerly known as Sasha Banks, behind the scenes really pushed for those titles to be a thing. And so she's kind of like the person that holds those belts and is the one that makes them relevant. So if she can win with Lyra, that's going to be quite an accomplishment. And I think it makes the belts a little bit more of like a real legitimate thing.
Shout out to Sasha Banks. I love her gimmick of like coming out in just like nerdy outfits every now and again. Like she's the one that went viral for coming out in a Sailor Moon outfit, I think, during a Royal Rumble.
Rey Mysterio has a match, and he always comes out as a superhero for WrestleMania. So one of the coolest things is that people usually will have certain little, if you know, kind of symbols or certain kind of things with their ring gear for WrestleMania. Seth Rollins debuted his Chicago Bears pride one year, and everyone in the Midwest was like, finally, someone did it. If you like pageantry, like there's like nothing more pageantry without being a pageant than WWE for sure.
Especially at WrestleMania and like the Royal Rumble and stuff too.
Yeah. 100%.
All right.
100%.
All right, He-Man. Let's get into the main event. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena for the Undisputed Championship. John Cena has sold his soul to The Rock. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? How do you pitch this to someone like me or Alex who, well, let's say Alex, who might not want to invest their time in this one?
I'm definitely an evangelist for pro wrestling, and the reason why isn't because I think pro wrestling is important. I think pro wrestling can teach you a lot about yourself, right? Because the stories that we invest ourselves into are generally reflective of the things that we either feel in our real lives, we wish were in our real lives, or the world that we see. So usually when I talk to somebody who's like, okay, you like pro wrestling, why should I watch pro wrestling? I go, well, why do you watch your favorite movie? No one is going to see the new John Wick and be like, that's fake, that's dumb, that's boring. I know, like, or being like, I'm not going to watch John Wick 1 because I know that he's going to live. You're kind of along for the ride, right? And so something that I usually ask people is like, well, like, what are the things that you like in the world, right? So why don't you guys tell me what are things that you like? And I can probably tell you relates to WrestleMania.
Good triumphing over evil.
Okay. Yeah.
And honestly, I love a good story. Whether or not the good guy wins, I love a damn good story.
Awesome. Josh, what about you?
Mostly for me, yeah, especially right now, we kind of need the good guy triumphing in something over the bad, because you want to find hope in something. And even if it's in a false narrative for a fleeting moment of joy, I think finding that hope and that joy in something is better than relegating yourself to the doom and gloom of the real world.
Right. Right, because I think that there's an important part of escapism, but also like I'm like a huge fan of Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, right? And Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings Legendarium based off of this concept that he created called eucatastrophe, which is essentially the idea that even when bad things happen, like greater good is coming. And so when you look at the end of John Cena, because that's what we're talking about, is the end of John Cena, and we live in a world where our heroes have kind of let us down, and that is reflective of the real world we live in. Is like, I feel like it's a constant thing, is like we're finding out that the people that we looked up to in childhood weren't actually good people, that the institutions that we believed in are actually kind of evil places and have hurt people. And that's what we're finding out about WWE, is like, kind of our generation's P.T. Barnum, this ringmaster that has looped in all of our love and joy and our sense of whimsy about the world and what we can believe in, has been an evil person, right? And then you have John Cena, who has told the generation to never give up. And he's like, I'm not just giving up. I'm giving up on you. Juxtaposition with Cody Rhodes, the son of a guy who wasn't good enough to be a part of Vince McMahon's world. He wasn't good enough to be center ring in that circus. Cody Rhodes is coming up and saying, not only am I not just a name, but I'm better than the best name that you came up with. And that's what's really on the line here, is it, within this story, even if Cody Rhodes loses, what we have to wait to see is, what does the guy that wants to become the man and beat the man, what does he do when that Thanos snap may happen? What happens if everything doesn't work out? I mean, to me, that's a movie that I paid money to see. That's something that next Saturday I could be thinking about a lot of different things, but I think I'm going to tune in for that and be like, yeah, you know what? I'm a part of a greater story, because I can tell you this, is that when I got back into wrestling, it was just to spend time with a guy who I thought was lovely. And then throughout that time, I started getting connected into stories and remember like, oh, wait, this guy is now like a big deal? That's wild. And then thinking to myself is like, there's no way that like they're going to let that guy win. And then they do. And I know in my own life, there have been literal times where like I have watched a wrestling match and had been thinking about a problem. Like literally, I had a book published like 10 years ago, and I watched Daniel Bryan win at WrestleMania 30, and I never thought that would happen. And I was literally watching him fight Dave Bautista, and I was swearing at the screen like I was that little kid at that house show when I was a toddler saying, Hulk sees me, Mom. He knows that I'm here. And I'm screaming for Daniel Bryan and begging Dave Bautista, who is literally Drax the Destroyer. I'm like, tap, you tight jeans tattooed person. Like, just tap. I want this other guy to win. And then I saw the impossible happen. And you know what I thought about? I thought about how I'd been fighting to get a book published for so many years. And I thought to myself, as I watched Bryan Danielson hold up the championship that he was never supposed to have, I thought, I have to finish that book. And I did it. And I think that that's what good media does, is it reminds us of our ethics. It reminds us of who we are. And I'm hoping that if you're watching this or listening to this, is that maybe you won't watch WrestleMania, but you'll maybe stop to think about, I don't have to look down on things that make people happy, at the very least.
Well said.
100% fantastically said there, Hemanstarfox. So I think, getting back to the conversation of Cody Rhodes and John Cena, I really think the match really only ends one of two ways. I don't think Cody Rhodes leaves as champion unless it ends in a disqualification, in which case the crowd still gets to leave happy because Cody's still champ, but he gets beat down by The Rock and Cena afterward. And then maybe there's some kind of reunion or tease for some kind of team up with like Roman Reigns or someone else. But I think that's the least likely of maybe three scenarios then. I think Cena wins either through underhanded means because he's got the board behind him with The Rock, or I think it's a double swerve and Cody Rhodes comes out as an actual board member or whatever with The Rock, and Cena's been played the whole time, sort of like what happened to Mick Foley in the 1998 Survivor Series, where there's this tournament to get to see who the new WWE champion is going to be. You've got Mick Foley as Mankind, who Vince McMahon has been like touting him as like his new corporate champion. And then you have The Rock, who like the people are cheering for. He's got the people's elbow. He's doing all these moves that people are cheering for. And then you get to the final match where in this tournament where it's The Rock versus Mankind. And all of a sudden it's revealed that The Rock has been secretly been getting helped, or very openly getting helped with, by Vince McMahon, but they've done it in a way that you're like, oh, well, they just missed the big boss man, and The Rock caught his nightstick in that match, and these weird little happenstances happen. But in fact, it was all just a big master plan where The Rock was actually going to sell out to Vince McMahon and become the corporate champion that Mick Foley thought he was going to become. And I think that might be the other side of it, but I hope that's not the case, because I don't want all that goodwill that Cody Rhodes has built up over the last few years to just go down the toilet, because The Rock needs to be able to control the champion.
Yeah. We're in an interesting place in wrestling. We're in an interesting place with The Rock where, he openly talks on Twitter and Instagram that he's playing a character, which doesn't really bother me, but like, it's something that you didn't typically see even 10 years ago. If you look at this from a historical lens, typically when someone retires, they don't win. So we know that John Cena is retiring. I don't think that his hairline can hold any longer. And, very clearly he's focused on Hollywood and doing really great voiceovers for corporations. So WWE, to not be morose, I don't look at WWE as a wrestling company, and I haven't for a very long time. And especially now that it's owned by TKO, I see it as a marketing vehicle. It is a marketing vehicle. Their main driver of revenue is not the tickets they sell. It is their TV deals, and it's their licensing deals. It's the being a propaganda wing for Saudi Arabia. It's the things that they sell. And the thing is that good feelings operate to consumers interacting with you. Typically, consumers don't interact with brands that give them negative feelings. So you kind of need a good guy. The question will be is, where does WWE want to put their money for possibly the next decade? And there could be that they want to push the Rock narrative. It could be that they're gonna that they need that good guy face to put on the trucks as they roll into town, so that way people know that WWE is coming and they feel really good. Is Cody Rhodes that guy? Now, the thing that's really interesting is that literally Cody Rhodes comes out dressed as an homage to Homelander, who is the main villain in the show The Boys. In The Boys, though, Homelander is supposed to be the good guy of all good guys. And then over time, you see that he's actually a really evil person, because the persona of the hero is actually a falsehood. So I think there's a number of ways we could look at this. I think that we do know that John Cena is not going to win. What we don't know is what happens to Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I just, not knowing anything about the wrestling booking situation and like what the plan is, I don't see the draw in bringing John Cena in for a match that he's going to lose. And I'm fine. I don't really care that he has the opportunity to surpass Ric Flair as like the number one heavyweight champion of all time, whatever. But I think that that's like where they're going with this sellout situation with him, where he's making it one last push where he knows he can't win on a one-on-one fight. So he's going to use whatever means he can to become quote unquote the man, truly and completely in the record book. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to not have Cody Rhodes win or at least walk away with the belt, because like you said, long term, what does John Cena getting the belt one last time get for you? Because I think the thing, if I remember correctly, he's going to be the last true champion of the WWE.
Right. Right.
And that could be setting up some kind of stage where maybe he doesn't retire after this match, and maybe it's building towards like they're doing a 2-night SummerSlam event this year. So maybe John Cena runs through at least August with the belt, and he pulls a Hulk Hogan where he's not going to defend the belt because no one's on his level. And then finally Cody finds a way to get him back in the ring and Cody wins it back at SummerSlam or something. It's a short-sighted mess of a plan, but the WWE hasn't shied away from things like that in the past, with like Goldberg and Hulk Hogan winning those belts back when they're way past their prime and there are other guys more deserving of the belt.
Yeah, I think a really interesting thing to think about is that John Cena is a Vince McMahon guy. John Cena, before he became like the hustle, loyalty, and respect, was literally about to be fired until Stephanie McMahon happened to see him joking around on a tour bus while they were all on a bus, and he was freestyle rapping. And that's what started the whole basic thugonomics John Cena. And then John Cena kind of became very close to Vince McMahon. And even when Vince McMahon's sexual assault allegations have resurfaced, they're not new, by the way. Like, Vince McMahon has had several allegations. These ones just have actual legal proceedings happening. He has had a difficult time saying anything bad about Vince McMahon, whereas Cody hasn't necessarily said like Vince McMahon's an evil person, but he's definitely been a little bit more open with criticism. And I think that that's another interesting aspect is that you kind of, a lot of wrestling fans are wondering is like, how far away are we getting from Vince McMahon's philosophy when it comes to professional wrestling? And I think that the long-term implications, the only way to know for sure is to tune in this Saturday and Sunday live on Peacock. I'm excited to chat about it with people, and you know, I'm hoping that it's a good time and we get some more pro wrestling fans that are excited.
You'll definitely be getting some texts from me throughout the night. I'll need someone to talk to. So you'll definitely be hearing from me just to get, if nothing else, your reactions to things. We may have to do a follow-up just to see if anything insane truly happens. We may have to do a bonus follow-up just to kind of talk about it. But Alex, any final questions for Hemanstarfox before we start wrapping up? You're on mute there, buddy.
Sorry. So this is on Peacock? I thought they were on Netflix exclusively now.
Raw is. They're kind of a little all over the place. WWE had the WWE Network that they own themselves, and then they sold it for a number of years to Peacock for like, I think about $1 billion. So their live events are free if you have Peacock, and there are free trials. So if you were like, oh man, I've never even watched a WrestleMania, you could theoretically do it for free.
So next question is, you were mentioning Homelander and the story of that. I believe in the last season of The Boys, the true villain actually is Starlight. Her reactions to Huey and what happened, she's the true villain of the series. If we, at least as far as I've been paying
always
attention.
Always blaming the woman, Alex.
Oh, don't you?
Toxic masculinity.
I'm sorry,
running wild.
That episode where how she treats what he's been assaulted for months is unforgivable. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I actually stumbled on Boys like on a complete whim while I was recovering from a surgery.
Oh my God, that's the same thing. He's like, I watched The Boys. I had recovered from a surgery, so I was couch bound for like a week or so, and I just binged The Boys.
Like, I didn't even know what it was about. I was just like, it was on like I was I had gone through like all of my usual streaming services, and like, you know, Prime Video is so hard to navigate, and so I just was like, okay, this is being recommended to me. Okay, whatever. And it's a very good show, very dark, and you know, especially when you're stuck with your own thoughts, it's a hard one to get through, especially if you've been in any sort of religious trauma, for sure. Here's what I'll say: is
it's a joke.
Starlight is a very interesting character, maybe one of the most true characters, like true to life characters. Like when I think about that girl in my church youth group that was under a lot of pressure, like Starlight fits that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I think that The Boys also brings in a really interesting narrative of that people aren't uniquely only victims.
Yeah.
And I think that also relates to Cody Rhodes. It's like Cody Rhodes, like maybe you weren't given your roses, but did you ever really deserve them in the first place? Right.
Philosophy, talking smack, getting deep with the wrestling episode.
If there's anything that I'm known for, it's bringing serious concepts into things that shouldn't have been that serious.
Oh, I've known you for over 20 years. I know that to be an absolute fact. Well, Hemanstarfox, thanks so much for spending the time with us today. Thanks for staying up a little late for us even to get this conversation going. If you want to share any social medias or plug anything that's not just get a free subscription to Peacock for your trial and watch WrestleMania, let everyone know where they can find you, or anything you'd like to say before we head out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you guys for taking your platform and sharing it with me. If you guys are interested, I do stream on Twitch periodically. Right now, I'm finishing up my bachelor's in philosophy, and I'm about to head to grad school. So I've been kind of in and out with creating content, but you can find me at Hemanstarfox, and that's on Twitch. I have a YouTube channel. I'm also on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me. And really, even if you're not really interested in context, but you're like, hey, I just really want to talk about wrestling, feel free to reach out to me. As far as like all of your, Smackverse, is that what we called it?
Yeah, the newly dubbed Smackiverse. Yeah,
like the Smackverse. I just want to congratulate you. I know that you guys are edging in on 200 episodes. You're going to have that big live podcast. That's quite an accomplishment. And for
5 weeks away.
Yeah, so I would highly suggest that you guys show up to that. I'm going to try to show up to it.
Well, Josh and I are showing up to it.
That would be wild. And then it's just me. Yeah. What I'll say is that I know that life is difficult at times, and that we often want to use the things that we're interested in to escape from it. And what I'll say is that maybe even if we touched on some heavy topics, I'll just say this is, what if we use the things we love to face the pain that we see?
I like it.
Right? Yeah. And
wonderfully said.
We can just make the world a better place, because sometimes things don't get better, but we can become better.
And Alex, as Hemanstarfox said, there are places in the Smackiverse where you can get in touch with us directly. That would be one in our Discord. You want to let them know what they can do and where they can find the link to said Discord.
The link to the Discord is just below, or you can join us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. It's where we talk about things. And by the way, yes, wrestling falls under superheroes, so this is on brand for us. And if you don't like it, you can argue with us on our Discord, and we'll just mute you.
I think we had a SmackDowns where someone suggested Brock Lesnar and was like, hey, it counts. He's playing a character.
That's true. That is very true.
So as Alex said, you can find the link to our Discord in the episode description. I will also link all of Hemanstarfox's, I'll link his Twitch to the episode description. All you have to do is click that Hemanstarfox name in the episode description. Please find us on all the social media platforms: Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Email us your thoughts, questions, reviews, concerns, whatever it may be that you want to talk to us about. SmackDown submissions, maybe. You can email those to tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes, Beppo for our original avatars, Retro Ale Studios for our Ricky avatars. Thank you to Joey Fitzgerald for our thumbnails. They are absolutely wonderful. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatchers of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Hey, Hemanstarfox, what should people be watching?
They should watch Star Trek. Strange New Worlds is having a new season.
Hey, Rock, go fuck yourself.
That's Cody Rhodes, baby.